Welcome to Dreammakers, candid conversations with women that will change the way you see success, purpose, and what it takes to bridge the two. I call these women Dreammakers because they use their rebel nature to achieve their dreams and lift people and communities up. You simply can't have one without the other, and I want to learn how they do it so that more of us can find purpose while pursuing our own growth. So we open up a bottle of wine and we talk and we have some fun. I'm Neha Sampat, a three-time tech founder and CEO with a focus on meaningful companies that are places to dream big, build up, and be a good human. I'm CEO of Content Stack, a modern technology stack for all of your digital content, and also a certified sommelier, hence the wine. Today, I'm joined by Christie Cleveland, a woman who has transformed content ecosystems in several organizations. I'm going to start the intro over. Today, I'm joined by Christie Cleveland, a woman who has transformed content ecosystems at several organizations. Christie is currently Senior Product Manager at Freeletics. I called her an inventor and she challenged me and she said, actually, I'm a creative. Hey, Christie.
Hey, how are you, Neha?
Good. Thanks for joining Dreammakers. So excited to have you on.
Thank you for having me. It's really cool to be here.
So tell me, what's the distinction between inventor and creative? Why was that an important distinction for you?
I mean, okay, if you look at a thesaurus, they're synonyms, right? Originator, creator, inventor, designer, deviser, all these different words, right? For me, I think when the word of inventor is sort of like this, there are perhaps rigid expectations there for you to deliver something of value and something that's going to change other people's lives, right? You invent something and it goes out into the wild and people use it and they find value in it, right? As a creative, I feel like there's a lot less expectations. You don't know what to expect from someone. And there are a lot of, like you can really just, there aren't a lot of expectations around being a creative, you know? You can then make things for the sake of making, and you make things just for yourself. And things that are also really internal and that don't go out into the wild. They only serve you. So they only serve your soul. And that's why I really like the term creative. But also when I look at my creative inspirations over my life, they're not designated as inventors. Like David Lynch is a creative and Kate Bush is a creative, Mary Blair, the Disney artist, creative, Hilary Mantel, creative writer, Fiona Apple, incredibly creative musician, David Byrne, Stevie Nicks, Neil Stevenson, Daniel Ricciardo, Formula One driver, all these people that drive me to just live a creative life. They're maybe not necessarily deemed inventors. So
that's awesome. It's like you're taking the pressure off of what an inventor might mean, but giving yourself the freedom to be creative and still bringing, I love that you tied it back to soul. Like, I think that's such an important part of even thinking in the context of being a dream maker. It all comes back to like what drives you as, you know, what keeps you going? Why are you doing it? It has to be something you care about.
Yeah, definitely. And not to knock inventors, because inventors are super, super important. And creativity is part of inventing as well. I guess I just think of myself as just merely that creative person that doesn't want to be tied to really anything. I just want to do my own thing.
I love it. Okay, let's we've already poured ourselves a little glass of wine. Let's talk about the wine a little bit and have a sip, and then we can jump into a little bit more because I love where you're going. I'm going to share. So the wine that we opened was this delicious and beautiful. I have got a little bottle, and I think you probably hopefully got a whole size one. A Billecart-Salmon. This is a champagne, one of my favorites. It's a rosé, and it's got a lovely, lovely color, which I have in this glass, so you can hopefully see it. You put it up against a little bit of white, which is a good trick to see the color come through. And it's kind of a light pale pink with almost a tint of orange. And this is one of my favorite champagnes. I love the winemakers. It's a family-owned winery that's been around since the 1800s, which is really rare to find these days. Generation to generation, I think they're on their 9th or 10th generation now. And they take so much pride in how they make the wine and how much time they put into it. And they're always about time and quality over quantity or over fast delivery, which I really respect in something as creative as wine. So let's just have a quick sip and enjoy. Cheers, Sante.
Cheers.
Tell me about that glass.
The glass I'm drinking this beautiful rosé in. I'm such a sucker for pink. I'm such a girl. I love the colors of rosés, and half the time I'll just drink a rosé based on the shade of pink it is. Very judgmental about rosé shades. So this glass, we needed champagne glasses, my husband and I, when we moved to Germany. We got rid of so many things and repurchased them here because it was just easier. And I had always wanted champagne saucers, like in the 50s. And most of our furniture is like mid-century modern, Los Angeles. So of course a champagne saucer goes really well with, our interior decor. And yeah, but they're actually German, and the makers escape me, but it's a really, really classy German company. They make very good glasses. And so we have a whole set. These actually match our tall drinks glasses and our water glasses.
They're beautiful.
Yeah. Tell me about yours.
So I poured a real pour into this glass. It's a goblet. And I don't think I've used this glass since my wedding night. It was given to me as from one of my friends who lived in Italy at the time as a wedding toast glass. So I have a set of 2 of these. And when you pulled out your glass, I had to go get something more interesting. So that's what I have. And I'm going to have a sip out of this glass, and then let's talk about what we taste.
Yeah. And thank you for shipping this bottle to Germany. I really appreciate it. It was a lovely gesture. So thank you.
Oh, of course. It's always the logistics of you and me getting the same wine is always part of the challenge of setting these things up, because I live in Texas now, and getting certain wines to Texas is already challenging. So I have to always compare, like, what's something that would be fun, exciting, interesting, and worthy of the occasion, but that we can get to 2 distinct locations. And so this is the one that won that battle. What I love about this too is like because of almost all the care that the winemakers put into it, they spend time fermenting it more than a typical champagne house might. And that gives it a lot of freshness because the acidity holds the freshness of the fruit. And so I feel like you can actually taste some of the red fruit when you taste this wine. And then the citrusness from the acidity also comes out really strong. And I almost get like grapefruit peel or lemon, but then like strawberries and raspberries and like red fruits.
My palate is nothing compared to yours in your training, but it's really refreshing is what I like about it. It's very, effervescent, beyond like your typical champagne. So, and actually, do you know what town they're in the Champagne region? Because when I studied in Paris, I used to go out there a whole lot.
If I try to pronounce it now, I'll probably fumble, but I'll put it into the notes. And it's like 20 minutes. It's a village like 20 minutes outside of the main regions in Champagne, outside of Epernay. So it starts with an M, and I can't remember the name of it at the moment. Beautiful, beautiful wine. Effervescence. And it's interesting because when I teach my wine classes, which I haven't had a chance to do in a while, I usually try to pair wine with a personality. And I think it's really cool that we ended up with a sparkling, bubbly wine, and you said effervescence yourself, but I was going to tie it back to you as an effervescent personality, which is how people like Content Stack who have had the opportunity to work with you describe you. She's very effervescent and bubbly and interesting. And so I thought it was a very fitting wine for our conversation today.
That is a really nice thing to say about me, comparing me to a champagne. I am going to take that forevermore and maybe put on my LinkedIn like a bottle of champagne.
I love it. All right, Christie, I want to learn more about you. So I found that every person has a superpower, and when they recognize and respect that, and then they apply it consistently, that's when magic comes together and magic happens. What is your superpower, and how do you cultivate that?
Oh boy. Enthusiasm is the first thing that comes to mind. I have to say, probably everywhere I've worked, my coworkers have always said I have an extraordinary amount of enthusiasm for what I do. And I think I'm really good at rallying people around and getting them excited about things, things that I'm excited about myself. I mean, it's key in my role as a product manager. So I've been a product manager for 12 years now. And, one of the things that's really core to being a product manager is that you need to bring people into agreement in order to get everyone to go forward and build something together. And if you're not excited about, what you're doing, then you can't get other people excited. You can't get them on that bus going in that same direction. No one's going to get on a boring bus. They want to get on an exciting bus that they know is going to bring them a good time and is going to help solve their problems.
Absolutely.
And that's what I do for a living.
Yeah.
Get people on the really exciting bus.
You have to be a rallier to be a product manager, 100%. Awesome. Yeah. Okay. Do you consider yourself a rebel? Like, what do you think of when you hear that word? Is that something you'd associate with?
Fuck yeah, I do. Like, that is like, yes. So there's this tension in me. It's always been there that, like, I'm like this nice girl. I'm the girl next door. I want to see everyone happy, but also I just want to break shit and then rebuild it and make it better. And, like, when I get pissed off, I go out and I search for change, and I get really vivacious, I guess you could say, when I see injustices or people being treated poorly, or when things just really need to change. So, and that's, I think, where I really rebel, and I don't like going the same route as everyone else. So yeah, I think that's probably where I end up being a rebel. But it is a strange tension in me, because I think also in my role as a product manager, you are getting everyone on the bus and getting everyone together and getting them aligned. But, there's that part of me that will always challenge the status quo. I'm always gonna be questioning. So yeah, that's.
Do you feel like that's helped you and worked in your favor, or maybe not?
Both. I mean, I'm damned either way. But honestly, at this point in my life, I just own it, because that's who I am. And early on in my career, I would compromise. I'd be like, oh, I'm not going to rock the boat, but I would get so upset at not doing what I thought was right, or, not challenging things when I thought that they could be better and be done better. Like when people were half-assing things, or, they weren't really wanting to follow the entire vision because it was too scary. And I just got so sick of compromising that, maybe it honestly probably is like when you shake a champagne bottle and the cork pops. I've said so many times, like, man, that just pops my cork. Like, and that's what I say when I get mad. So yeah, it's definitely worked against me, but probably the best time it worked for me was when I was at Blizzard, and I was in a meeting talking about how the CMS at Blizzard was really frustrating me. It was preventing me from doing my job. It was slowing down those who reported to me and preventing them from doing their job. Mm-hmm. And that was this cork popping frustration. And so I went into this meeting and listed off all the things. I'm like, this is bad. This is absolute shit. You have to fix this. And the poor guy in the room, who was the owner of the CMS, just was sitting there watching me list all of this off. And you could see him sinking and sinking and sinking. And I didn't even feel bad about it. I just needed to get shit done. And then we got to the end of the meeting, and he said, all of your complaints are valid. I don't know what I can do about them because I don't have the resources. But let's talk more about this. And I just kind of deflated, and I felt kind of like an asshole at that point. And then we started talking some more, and I started thinking, oh, he's kind of handsome. No. I work with him. Well, let's just fast forward to like a year later when we got married. And that's how I met my husband was, basically I was really enthusiastic about helping my employees and driving the business forward. And then I was just really frustrated and angry and going against the status quo and, resisting all of these things that people were saying, this is just the way it has to be. But that's how I met my husband. Right?
I think this is like one of my favorite stories I've ever heard. It's so awesome. And I like in my role at Content Stack, we always talk about how we try to bring together the business thinkers and the technical thinkers, and we bring them in a room and we harmonize them. And like, we actually try to help make that connection happen and solve some problems for organizations. And I think that you just described exactly that. It's really, really cool. So what in your path and in your career, what's kind of been the most difficult thing that you've come across?
I think it probably goes back to pushing boundaries, pushing the status quo, and always wanting to improve. It's really easy to, stay the course in a way, like when the course is not one that's really challenging or really scary. It's very easy to stay in that safe space. And I've never really liked the safe space. I think my entire life is a testament to never staying in that safe space, and the choices that I've made. And that's really difficult because you come up against a lot of people who just want things to stay the same because it's safe. A lot of people who might not necessarily have the ability to see a vision, and you have to get them on board. You have to, once again, get them on that bus so that we're all in alignment and driving things, whether that's like in the business world or like even, I have the same thing in my marriage, trying to convince my husband, let's buy this couch. And he's like, no, I want the giant couch that's comfortable. Right. I mean, you have to bring people together. And I think that's probably the biggest challenge. And I know that some of the feedback I've gotten is that I can be really overwhelming in that space.
Most of us that are rebels do have that feedback, right? It's just a part of who we are. And you can't be a rallier unless you're a little bit overwhelming.
Yeah, definitely. But and you have to really get comfortable with rejection. And let's be frank, I'm still not comfortable with rejection. I mean, I'm still working that when I get feedback, not to collapse and have my ego just completely cave in on me. I've definitely made some huge strides in the last few years when I understand, like, even when I'm getting this feedback about me personally, it's not about me. It's about the wider vision of what I'm working on. And it's also about working with other people and being collaborative. And so I've done a lot of work around separating myself, from the feedback that I get from other people. And it's helped me grow leaps and bounds. But yeah, like that, getting people to align and see the value that I see and really buy into creative projects that I see, and then getting comfortable with like when they say no, or they're too scared to go forward and they pin it on me. And it's like, okay, well, then let's figure out a new way to go about this. Let's see what else can I do to get them on board, and just constantly navigating that.
So you said something really powerful, which I just want to underscore, especially for like the young women who are trying to figure out how to navigate the difficult and complex landscapes that are business and career and tech. And that is that you learned how to separate your personal aspect from like the rejection. And if you think about like compartmentalizing that, and this is something as an entrepreneur that I run into constantly, right? Like you're going to run into roadblocks every day, like multiple times a day. And sometimes it's a customer or a prospect that decides to go a different direction. And sometimes it's an investor that decides to go a different direction. And sometimes it's just an employee that you love and you want to keep happy, and you just figure out that you can't anymore. And it's hard because for me, it is very personal. The business is mine. It's my baby. I've spent everything trying to grow it. But at the same time, you have to separate it, and you have to understand that sometimes there's a time when it's okay for the other person to go a different direction. They may come back and you keep the door open, but you have to accept it and not take it personally. And I think that's really powerful.
Yeah, it's really, you probably had some just significant experiences around that as an entrepreneur, and struggling to build each of your 3 businesses, right?
I mean, I think calluses is a part of like growth, right? You just, if you can't take rejection, you can't grow.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think the calluses part is where like maybe we'll differentiate, because I don't ever want to have those calluses. I think building up any sort of callousness really prevents you from fully engaging with another person on an empathetic level, but also, you know, feeling your own feelings as well. And part of that, not separating myself from the rejection, was also, how can I say this? Like really understanding how to not be afraid of my own feelings. Feelings are just information. My feelings are not me necessarily, and they're no reflection on me, but they're information that I'm learning, still learning how to process in order to understand things. Like when I get angry, okay, I've learned that when I get angry, my boundaries have been infringed upon. So then I start asking myself, well, what happened? What are these boundaries that were infringed upon? And I start looking at it more clinically. And then I can start addressing the actual problem. So anger is a symptom of the actual problem of, I need to have better boundaries. I need to communicate with someone at work that, you know, you can't maybe drop this thing on me last minute. You need to come to me 2 or 3 weeks ahead of time in order to get this work done, right? And that's how I've gotten to a much more healthier place of understanding rejection, as well as considering emotions information rather than an essence of like who I am and what I am.
I love that. It's like a balance of being in touch with your own self and your boundaries, but also having the empathy as you continue to collaborate with others. That's awesome. So one of the things that Dreammakers tend to do is lift people up and lift people up in their communities. What do you do there? How do you make that happen?
Oh my gosh. So the immediate thing that came to mind was this image of my friend Catherine, who I work with. She's a design manager at Freeletics. And something that we've talked about a lot is creating psychological safety for people to be able to voice their opinions and understand that when they disagree, that their opinion is heard, and we actively engage their concerns and why they're disagreeing. And that's something that's both so important to both Catherine and I. And that's actually one of the things that brought us together and we became friends. But also part of that is allowing the autonomy for people on my team, you know, to explore and really understand, you know, the pros and cons of the work they're doing so that they can voice these really informed opinions as well. They need to have the space to work. They need to have the time to work. And they need to feel like they have blockers so that they can focus on what they're working on. And I think all of those three things work together to really create a kick-ass team that produces amazing work, right? Because we all know from research, and especially as women, that diversity of opinion and diversity of viewpoints is really how you innovate. So anything I can do to bring that in to the workplace is something that I'm really passionate about.
Absolutely. And there's so much proof that having diversity in the workplace, whether it's diversity from the perspective of minorities and other underrepresented folks, but also just diversity of thought in general, like people that come from different backgrounds or different experiences coming together to have that space to think and imagine is super powerful. Cool. Well, what would you say to our listeners, many of them being women that are on a path towards something that they're dreaming about? What would you say to them about trying to achieve a dream?
Okay, finally, you give me an easy question. Self-compassion. So think about like when you're sitting around with your girlfriends and you're bitching about something at work, or, you know, you're just complaining about how tough things are in life, or, you know, a relationship or whatever, right? You sit there and you lean forward and you're like, oh, honey, you know, like go easier on yourself, be kind to yourself. Oh yeah, this is not fair. You know, yeah, you're really struggling, right? And, you know, you drink some wine, you really like, you sit there and listen for hours and you just work this shit out with her. What are you doing for yourself in return, right? So we give compassion to our loved ones but we often don't give ourselves compassion. Instead, what's going on in our head is, I'm not working enough hours. I'm not doing enough. I'm not good enough. Oh my God, I look awful today. Oh man, I'm getting bags under my eyes. Oh, look, there's another wrinkle. Oh, I put on 5 pounds. We just tear ourselves apart internally. And there was this really great Harvard Business Review article about like how there was a ton of research around how it's not self-confidence that actually brings you success. It's self-compassion. And I was like, that is so spot on. Because when you can cut yourself a break, you suddenly have that space and that breath to really think and rest and recover. Right.
I love
it. Yeah. Give yourself the compassion that you give your loved ones.
That's awesome. This kind of just triggered something for me. I have done this thing called Tuesdays at noon for years now. And it started because I lived in San Francisco, and at noon on Tuesdays, they would do the fog alarm as like a test of the emergency system. And so you would hear it every Tuesday at noon, you'd hear this like foghorn. And I kind of took that as an opportunity to reset. And my whole thing was like, let yourself free of all the burdens that you've like put on yourself, like, and all the negativity and all the negative energy. I would like physically in my mind, take it in one bucket and like push it out. And then all the things I learned and all the positivity and all the reinforcement, I would take it with me forward. And that was like just a symbolic moment in time that I would think about every week, once a week, like give yourself a chance to like move forward from this point. Right. And it always just pushed me like one step ahead. It's like, oh, well, I learned all this. And even when I fell, I learned something from that failure or from falling. And it's been so powerful just as a tool. And as I've gotten older and more experienced in my career, I've taken it forward with me. And it comes back to like building the calluses. It's not about not having empathy. It's more about like allowing yourself to not be hurt by it, you know?
Yeah. So I actually have a question for you. How did you get to that point where you understood what you needed to do at Tuesdays at noon? Because I think a lot of us, it doesn't even occur to us to stop and have that mindfulness moment. So like, do you remember what the trigger was to actually start doing that?
I can't remember what triggered it, but I remember there was a time when I decided that I was not going to allow negative energy around me, and that I was going to take the positive energy and the positive reinforcement and the good people that were lifting me up and my champions and let them be where I focus. Mm-hmm. And that I would try to separate myself from the negative energy. And that wasn't that I wouldn't be empathetic towards people that had that, but I just wasn't going to allow it to enter my realm of thinking. And that was a powerful moment because it just pushes you forward, right? Like we have such a short time to contribute to the community and to life. And, you know, there's the careers, and then there's what you do after your careers, and there's what you do leading up to it. And like, I would like it to be as positive as possible. And like, I've always been optimistic and optimism driven. And so this is a way to like take that and symbolize it into something that's a tool to actually push yourself forward.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Because yeah, for so many people, it's just making that shift, that decision. And there's this moment in your life where you just decide, I need to pivot. I need to do something different.
So that's a good transition to my next question, which is every dream maker I know has this awesome just do it moment. Can you think of what yours might be?
Okay. I feel like I have so many, but okay. I'll tell one that I think a lot of women can probably relate with. So I was like, I don't know, like 4 months into my job at Disney, which was my dream job. Ever since I was a kid, I had wanted to work for Disney in some capacity, the biggest one being an animator. So I started at Disney as a product manager, and I was handling content for them. And I had just come back from a trip seeing some friends in Boston. I flew in on a red eye to Los Angeles, picked up my car at LAX, drove to Burbank to work, Glendale, and got out of my car and promptly collapsed in pain, like right next to my car. And that led to an emergency surgery for endometriosis. It was supposed to be an outpatient, laparoscopic,
Yeah.
super easy. Instead, it went completely pear-shaped, and I ended up in the hospital for 4 days because the endometriosis was so bad. It absolutely wrecked all of my internal female organs, unable to have children now because of it. It was a very traumatic time. And Disney and everyone that I worked with, my boss, they were amazing. And it was my first experience with a company that, didn't treat me really as, an employee, but treated me as family, because everyone set the example of putting themselves first, then their family, and then the job. So it was great, which made me want to come back to work as soon as possible. And I came back probably 2 weeks too soon.
Mm-hmm.
I hobbled in on these Michael Kors Dorsey stiletto high heels and a pencil skirt, basically trying to look super composed and like, everything's fine, don't worry about me. Trying to keep everything together, into an all hands meeting where they had announced they were reorging. And so I stand in the back, and my vice president's up front talking about things. She waves at me, gives me the thumbs up, and I'm like, yeah, I'm back. Nothing's changed. And then she announces to everyone that I'm now going to be in charge of Star Wars.
Oh my God.
Probably at that time in 2016, like the biggest brand in the world. And I mean, I felt those stilettos wobble. And I just went, oh shit, I'm not ready for this. And I stood there just smiling, going, keep smiling. Don't panic. Do I look like I'm panicking? I probably look like I'm panicking. I hobbled back to my desk, sat down, started taking a few breaths. And my friend Shauna came over, put her hand on my shoulder, and she said, girlfriend, you got this. And I said, you know what? This is my moment. I've got this. And I worked my ass off, probably more than I should have after that surgery. But man, yeah, I worked so hard working with the people at Lucasfilm, and I loved working with them. And I did everything I could to bring value to their job, to the part of Star Wars that I owned, to be an awesome representative of this brand and the best product manager they could possibly have. Even though I was so terrified being put in, I was in this really vulnerable position. Yeah. And then here I'm given this enormous, what I thought was an enormous responsibility. And I did it. But the thing is, like, I didn't do it alone. And that was really, I think, super key for me.
Yeah.
It wasn't just me that made a success out of it. It was everyone that I worked with, and they fully supported me. And it was just awesome. So beautiful.
A lot of it is about finding your tribe and having people around you that are your champions. And it sounds like, are you still in touch with Shauna?
We text every single night.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
everybody needs a Shauna. And like, I just want to say for the people that are listening, find Shauna or your group of Shaunas, because those are the people that are going to help carry you. And especially as women, we need to help each other and lift each other up in those situations. And thank you for sharing such a personal story as well. I know endometriosis is very common and a lot of people don't talk about it. I actually suffered from it too, and I never had kids as well. And so I empathize with you, and I went through a lot dealing with that and accepting that myself. But it's something that it's crazy how often it's not discussed and shared. So appreciate you being
here. No, that's part of it. That's part of why I talk about my experiences like that, because, we shouldn't stigmatize them. And also, real quick, shout out to Shauna. She also put my wedding together in a week along with my mother. She's a super crazy project manager. So she is like the backbone of any amazing tech team. So Shauna's fabulous.
Awesome. Shout out to Shauna. So one of my favorite pieces of advice has always been never be boring. And you certainly are not boring. I would love to hear about, I know you mentioned F1 earlier, maybe your love for F1 and like how else do you consider yourself to not be boring?
Oh my God, you just put a quarter in me when you ask me to talk about F1. You put a quarter in a machine that just like to make it play. Just Oh my God. So thank you for not considering me boring. This goes back to that voice inside your head that just tells you, all the things that you think you are because of your subjective experience, right? But oh my God, I love Formula One. I love fast cars. I love race cars. I love Ferraris. This is the cliche. I'm a Ferrari fan for Formula One. But I love the technology aspect. I love that technology is a part of a sport. But like what a lot of people I think who don't watch Formula One don't understand is that it's a team sport. And you have a team that starts building the car before the current championship year has finished, and they're designing the car against not like right now 9 other teams, and they're using technology to do it. And it's engineers and data scientists, right? And they're building a car for one person to drive, and it's just phenomenal for me. And even though I'm a Ferrari fan, like considered like Mercedes are the reigning champions. And on top of that, I love what Mercedes does because the man who leads them, his name's Toto Wolff. His leadership is inspirational. Like he has said, we win together and we lose together. And he has worked so hard to create this culture where anyone can voice an opinion. And I've just learned so much from watching interviews with him where, they have a standard on their team where it's you see it, say it, fix it, right? And these are things that I've brought into my team at Freeletics. If we see something, we talk about it and then we talk about fixing it. So yeah, I'm tying my hobby back to, work, but like, it's really important. I love team sports. And I feel like F1 really falls in line with the fact that I work in tech and I like, it's a team sport and my job is a team sport too. So there are a lot of really nice parallels, but also fast cars and exotic locations. And
there's something with my guests on Dreammakers and fast cars. My last guest, Tracy Milligan, is a race car enthusiast, and she actually races. So I sense a theme. So maybe I should change from wine to race cars and see
yes.
what we can do. Okay, is there a way that you would try to cultivate not being boring? Like, what would you tell your younger followers?
Be curious. Mm-hmm. That's the number one way to not be boring. So it's not about, I guess, it's not about cultivating not being boring. It's about cultivating curiosity. When you're curious in things, you go and learn about them, and then you can talk about them. You can get involved in them. And yeah, you're not, if you're a curious person, then you are definitely not boring. And my mother would probably tell you my curiosity is a curse. Because I was always running off and like talking to people and asking people questions when I was a kid, and it gave her a heart attack. Every time she turned around, I was gone and talking to a stranger. And I was always reading books. And every summer I went to a private school and I commuted. So I was an hour away from all the other students. And so my summers were spent constantly going to the library, and I would teach myself a new language every summer because I was so curious about other cultures and how other people spoke and communicated. So yeah, it's that curiosity that makes you not be boring. You should always be asking questions and always wanting to learn about the world.
I'm with you. I think curiosity is actually a superpower. So you've got more than one. I think
yes.
Okay. I've got one more question for you, and then we're going to go into rapid fire because we are going to run out of time soon. So let me jump to that. How do you define success?
Oh my gosh. How do I define success? Success is really, I think, when you do things that are meaningful for you. I stopped a while ago subscribing to money and fame and, high-powered jobs as success. I think success is what brings you joy. So when I finish the second novel I'm writing, that probably won't be published, but it's just for me, that's success, right? Because it's joyful. It's success is when your life is filled with joy. And I understand your life can't be filled with joy always, But if you are pursuing what makes you joyful, then I do think your life is a success.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Love that. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to jump into rapid fire.
Oh my God.
So I try to ask my guests these same 4 questions and just respond with what comes to you. First, what's your wake up song?
Anything by Run the Jewels.
Okay, I love that. I'm gonna have to play a little bit of that. Okay. If your 19-year-old you asked you today what they should read or what they should listen to, what would you say?
Listen to way more Kate Bush and Devour the Speed of Trust by Stephen R.M. Covey.
Love it.
Which is way above a teenager, but whatever, be ambitious.
Yeah, absolutely. What's the wine you would recommend?
Okay, let me see. This is my friend Monica brought it over last night. Monica's Italian, and she's from the region Marche, which is on the Adriatic in central Italy. It's called an Umani Ronchi. It's a red, and it tasted a little bit like home. Home being California, and it tasted a bit like it really reminded me of a really beautiful Pinot from Santa Cruz. In a way. So yeah, Umani Ronchi.
Okay, Christie, I'm gonna ask you that one again because I don't know if it was on my end, but you froze for a second. So just in case.
Oh no.
I think it might have been my end. But
okay.
I'm gonna start over with the wine and
okay.
Keep going from there. Okay. Let me give it a couple second pause to make it easy for the clippers. Okay, what is a wine that you would recommend?
My friend Monica brought it over last night. She's Italian. She's from the Marche region of Italy. It's on the Adriatic coast of Italy in the central part. It's called an Umani Ronchi. It's spelled Umani and then Ronchi for all of those that don't speak Italian, including me.
Awesome. And that's a red wine?
It is a red wine. Yeah. Like very much tastes very similar to home. So like a Santa Cruz Pinot Noir. It's just really beautiful, really beautiful.
Okay. We'll look that up and maybe add it to the notes in the podcast as well.
Cool.
What should our listeners do tomorrow to help them become dream makers?
Okay, this is a big one. I think cultivate the paradox of being both open and selective. So really open to other ideas and viewpoints and experiences that you might not usually be open to, but also be really selective and discriminating in those and understand like what's worth your time and what's not. Right. And it really is a paradox and it's a constant balance. And it's something that I strive for, but I really feel like it brings so many opportunities when you work in that paradox, if it makes any sense.
I love it so much. It's so hard to do. And like, as a product manager, you have to live the life of the what's in all the time. But
oh my God,
in your life, and especially if you're a curious person, and especially if you're a very ambitious person, you kind of want to do everything, and it's really hard to say no to things. And it's an important lesson to learn how to say, to be open to certain things and to also be selective. I think that's really great advice for our young listeners. Thank you very much, Christie.
You're welcome.
Again, thank you for giving me an excuse to drink a lovely glass of champagne at 10 in the morning, my time.
Thank you for giving me an excuse to drink champagne, period.
It was so lovely having this conversation with you. You're such an incredible guest. I hope we get to do this again sometime. Thanks again. Appreciate having you on.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a really awesome time. I love talking to another woman about life and careers and wine.
Awesome.